It was late fall, and the evenings were getting particularly cold and damp. The kind of evenings you want to spend indoors with hot chocolate and delivery food. During that time, I befriended my KFC delivery driver, Jonah. He was a young boy who had recently moved to my town after a horrible fight he'd had with his family. He didn't want to give me too many details, but I was pretty sure it was because his family was biased towards his orientation. So weeks passed, and I developed this habit of ordering a KFC menu right at closing time. So it would be Jonah's last order, and he could spend some time with me after he delivered my order. We would watch silly videos on YouTube, dress up for fun, or simply chat all night. I had no idea that our friendship would trigger something as terrible as what happened that night. That year, I was in my last year of college. I had a lot of exams in the winter, so I was doing my best to prepare for them. I had a classmate, Evan, who seemed to be in control of his subjects and grades. He was a bit of an oddball because I would always see him alone in the courtyard before or after our courses, but I just figured he was the shy type, or the kind that wants to focus on his career and nothing else. So when I started feeling a little overwhelmed by the exams to come, I approached Evan and told him I admired how he stayed a top student throughout the 2.5 years. I asked him what his secret was. He was reluctant to talk at first. I saw this, and so I asked him, "Why are you so quiet? I just complimented you." He was looking down at the ground when he said, "Wait, you're not being sarcastic?" Why would I be sarcastic? I couldn't believe what he was saying. Poor fellow, I thought. He must have been bullied in his teens or something. Eventually, we started chatting, and he told me about how he stayed organized throughout the school year. He also gave me some tips on the subjects I was most worried about. Then December came, and I was really panicking about my exams, so I texted Evan and asked if he could come over to my place so that we could study together for the evening. Looking back at this, I can see all the ways a guy might interpret this invitation the wrong way, but I was genuinely hoping for a study buddy. It was around 8 p.m., it was raining, and Jonah's shift had ended, so he was at my place and we were watching something. The doorbell rang and I went to open the door. Evan was standing there awkwardly with a bouquet of roses in his hand. "Wait, what?" He didn't say anything. He stared at me in a creepy way, then started staring behind me at what I realized was Jonah, who was watching the scene from the hallway. Neither I or Jonah managed to say anything before Evan threw those roses in my front garden and walked away angrily. I was there all frozen, wondering how I might have miscommunicated my intentions. Jonah started laughing at the situation and was joking about this classic case of wrong signals. But I was just worried about what Evan might do next. Would he make sure that I failed my exams? No. Worse. Much worse. The next evening, I was watching TV when I heard a noise coming from outside. I thought it was a small animal in the bushes below the window. I stood up and walked to the window to see what was going on. Nothing was in the bushes, but then my eyes fell on the sidewalk, and my heart stopped. It was Evan, wearing a hooded jacket and staring right at me, and I was pretty sure he was the only one making noises in the bushes earlier. I just shook my head in disgust and pulled the curtains. His deranged behavior continued through the week. Every other night, he would appear at my house and creep around for an hour or so. Jonah encouraged me to call the police, but I didn't want to make a scene. I thought if I ignored him, he would eventually grow tired and give up. But it seemed like there was nothing he wanted more than to be a creepy stalker. I was feeling very stressed, to be honest. This was coming on top of the exams that were right around the corner. I just wanted both things to be over. The weekend came and I ordered my usual closing time KFC menu. Jonah arrived at my place and knocked at the door. I opened the door, said hi to Jonah, picked up the bag, and screamed when I saw Evan with a gun to Jonah's head. "What the hell? If I can't have you, you can't have him either," Evan said in the creepiest voice I'd ever heard. Jonah was just trying to breathe normally, so I continued. "We're not together, we're just friends. And it's none of your business. You shouldn't have a gun, and you shouldn't be here." I urged Evan to put the gun down, but he didn't care to answer any of the things that I'd said. He was just looking right into my eyes and pressing his gun on Jonah's forehead. I was dizzy and nauseous, and I felt a panic attack was taking hold of me. Right then, I heard the sirens. It was a police car. Evan immediately dropped his gun and ran, but didn't manage to make it past my fence as 2 policemen cuffed him. I was shocked at how fast everything had happened. I looked at Jonah and said, "What were the odds of the police being here?" Jonah laughed. "I called them before I left the restaurant. I had a hunch he'd turn up tonight." I was so impressed. I wish I had the intuition or courage to call the police all those nights leading up to the attack. Luckily, the worst had been averted, but I still flinch whenever I hear noises coming from my front yard. I had just started college, and it was the first time I was away from home. I was happy to slowly gain my independence, but I still felt homesick from time to time. More than anything, I felt overwhelmed by having to balance studying with being an adult. So by the winter, I was mostly ordering takeaway food and studying at home. I've always been the shy type, so it wasn't easy to make a lot of friends from the get-go. During the first few months, I only spoke to Pat, a tall girl with a lot of energy who was on track for becoming one of the best athletes in town. She was very welcoming to me. She showed me the top attractions in the city, and she would always invite me to her place to crash after the courses. I lived in a student hall at the time, so her big family house was always a better choice. But Pat had a big group of friends, and her house would often be filled with loud young people drinking and making fun of each other. "It's all jokes," Pat would assure me, but I still felt like I could never belong to the group as a whole. I took a liking to Pat's friend Ash, who was also an athlete, just like her. He was less outgoing than the rest, and I would often find him sipping on a smoothie and looking out the window. He never drank booze because it would ruin his performance, so he wouldn't embarrass himself like the others. During one of Pat's parties, I started chatting with Ash, and he suggested we go outside where it was quieter. I felt happy I could just talk to someone without having to shout. We were there for about an hour or so talking about school and sports. I mentioned to him that I lived at the student hall. I had no idea what he would do next. When I realized how late it was, I told him I was going back inside to say goodbye to everyone. "No, stay some more," he said, almost in a demanding way. I found it odd, but didn't think much of it. "I have to go," I replied, and went into the house to find Pat. Indoors, the party had escalated. Pat was standing on the coffee table directing some sort of drinking game. Everyone was super cheerful and oblivious to my entrance. So I decided I was just going to get my stuff and go home. When I walked out, Ash was still in the front yard where I'd left him. "Stay a while longer," he said again. I was pretty certain I didn't want to spend the night with him. "Ash, I'm going home. I'll see you at school." My voice sounded pretty harsh, but I wanted to be clear. However, he didn't stop there. "Let me at least walk you home," he insisted, and grabbed my arm. I felt a knot in my stomach as I realized this was not okay. "No!" I almost shouted at him. I thought of going back into the house and asking Pat what was wrong with her friend. But then I figured she'd be intoxicated and just give me a funny answer. So I decided I would go home and tell her about this next Monday at school. I started walking as fast as I could to send a clear message to Ash. The student hall was a bus ride away from Pat's, and I was pretty sure I could still catch the regular bus, as it was before midnight. I was getting close to the bus stop when I heard steps behind me. I quickly turned around, but I didn't see anyone. Was he following me? My heart started pounding faster, and I was really hoping for that bus to come soon. I waited at the bus stop for a few very long minutes, and I started shivering. I didn't even know if it was cold or I was just tired and worried about that creepy guy. When the bus came, I walked right in and didn't look back. He wasn't inside the bus, so I was safe. Or so I thought. I walked to the back seats and put some music on in my headphones. Then I looked behind me and I froze. Through the rear window, I could see Ash in the car behind. He was following the bus I was in. We made eye contact, and now I knew it was too late to escape him. I planned my next moves while on the bus, and when I got off, I just ran to the student hall. I used my card to enter the building and closed the heavy door as fast as I could. I knew that Ash didn't have a card as he had his own flat somewhere in the city. I could see him park his car in the front of the student hall, and I went to the elevator and peeked at him from behind a corner. He was standing in the front of the entrance, hands on his hips, probably waiting for someone to come in and let him through. But the student accommodation is usually pretty tight on security, so I thought there was no way he could force his entry. I went to my room, had a shower, and tried to fall asleep. But I just couldn't. I kept thinking about all the ways Ash could break in, and what he would do if he actually did. The more I thought about it, the faster my heart raced, and I just couldn't go to bed. I decided I was going to read for a bit, until I was tired enough to fall asleep. But instead, I just got hungry. I thought I would order something from the 24/7 KFC and pull an all-nighter. I really should have thought that through. At the time, I thought I must be paranoid to think Ash was still there. 2 or 3 hours had passed. It was cold outside, and he couldn't get in without a key or an invitation. So when I placed an order to KFC, I didn't think for 1 second what could happen. 20 minutes later, my KFC delivery driver came to the student hall and rang the bell. It wasn't up to me to buzz him in. The reception would do this. And the nighttime receptionist didn't know how the delivery driver looked, which explains what happened next. Someone knocked on my door, and I opened it, yawning, certain it was my KFC delivery driver. I then realized what I had done. It was Ash, wearing the driver's cap and holding the KFC food bag. Surprise! I felt like I was going to faint. I knew I was defenseless, so I just sat down on my bed. I asked Ash, "What have you done to the driver?" He was very laid back about it. "Not much. I just knocked him out and stole his hat, but I would have done anything to pay you a surprise visit." I was trying to continue the conversation with him in a calm voice while planning my exit, but it wasn't exactly a surprise visit. "I saw you follow me earlier." I don't know what he replied next, as I was too busy grabbing my phone and locking myself inside the bathroom. He started banging on the door and urging me to come out. I managed to call the reception and ask them to send security upstairs immediately, and before he could do anything more than creep me out, he was arrested and sent to the police station. I have no idea where he is now, but I'm just hoping he isn't stalking someone else. Last year, I dated a guy called Steve for a few months. Didn't work out for a variety of reasons, but nothing terrible happened, and although I was the one who left him, he didn't make a scene at the time. I was actually surprised at how well he took it, but I was about to realize how wrong I was. Summer holiday came, and I was always outdoors, hanging out with my sisters, or just reading in the garden. One day I was in the kitchen making some lemonade for everyone when my sister Kira walked in with a pretty urgent look on her face. "Zoe, I think I saw your ex outside." First I said, "Get out of here, what are the odds?" But Kira assured me it was him. After all, he'd been to my house a few times and she recognized him. But what's he doing here? I went outside ready to talk to him, but when he saw me, he ran away. The next day passed without events, at least during the daytime. It was pretty late, and I was in the living room watching something on Netflix when I heard something coming from outside. I looked at my sisters, and they looked back at me, and I realized we were all thinking the same thing: Steve. We checked all the windows, and they were closed. We also looked through them, and we couldn't see anyone outside the house, so we carried on with the movie. Then I looked to my right, and I froze. I could see Steve's creepy eyes through the window. I called my sisters and told them to look to their right. My older sister Kelly then shouted at Steve, "We're calling the police!" Steve heard and scuttered away. I told my sisters I was pretty afraid. I knew that this was his revenge on me for breaking up with him. "It was months ago," Kira said. "Has he been planning some sort of creepy stalking action ever since?" She wasn't making it any better for me. Then Kelly assured me, no matter what he wants, we're here together. That was a reassuring thought, but I knew this wasn't over, and I was on edge for the next few days. It was a really hot day, and Kelly brought some lounge chairs to the backyard. We had our bathing suits on, and we were lying in the sun with some music on. Unfortunately, the music and sunglasses meant that we were oblivious to what was happening in the bushes. I had decided to order some KFC for everyone as it was too hot and I was too lazy to cook anything. When the delivery driver arrived, I heard the engine stop, so I went to open the door for him. I told him to follow me into the backyard so that I could get my wallet and tip him. When we walked into the garden, the driver stopped and looked startled. "What the hell is he doing in there?" he asked with a loud voice. I looked in his direction and dropped my wallet when I realized Steve was in the bushes, and he had been staring at us for who knows how long. I was too shocked to do anything, and my sisters were busy covering themselves up, so the delivery driver decided it was time to act. He took out his phone and was preparing to call the police when Steve darted out of the bushes and pressed a switchblade right on the driver's neck. My sisters shouted, and I felt like I was going to puke. "You're not going to call anyone," Steve whispered to the driver. I thought of calling the police myself, but I was scared Steve would actually kill the driver. I had no idea what he was capable of. He was way crazier than I ever thought he was. "Steve, just put the knife down," Kelly said. "You don't want to hurt anyone." "Yes, I do. You don't know me. You don't know what I want to do." "Clearly not," Kelly continued. I realized she was now keeping him distracted and giving me time to act. I reached into my bag without making a sound and dialed 911 as quickly as I could. By now, Kira was behind Steve, who was too busy arguing with Kelly to realize what was going on. Kira grabbed his switchblade and the delivery driver punched Steve so hard I thought it would KO him. Within minutes, the police arrived and put Steve in custody. He left in the police car kicking and screaming like a deranged child. It was a horrible sight and a really scary experience overall. I was lucky I had my sisters with me. Steve is now in jail and probably won't be stalking anyone for a very long time. Even so, this whole experience has made me much more cautious around dating. And I feel very sad at the thought that all it takes is just one guy to ruin your trust in other people. And that's a wrap. If you like the stories, why not click the like button? And before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button so you never miss another blood-chilling story. See you next time, and stay safe out there.